G'day everybody, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to turn off the lights and turn on this spring we made with common hand tools. Okay, so for the stem of our lamp we're going to be using this old shock absorber that I got off a pit bike. Now as you can see it's all faded in the colours, this is all starting to get a little bit corroded and there's some signs of rust. So we're going to have to fix all that up, and the first step is disassemble this spring. First we can remove the oil reservoir from the shock absorber. Then we can tackle removing the spring. I use an old impact bit and a hammer to remove this. I'm sure there's a proper tool to do this, but I don't have one, so I'm just working with what I've got. You can see the adjuster going down, and you can stop when you can turn the spring by hand. And there's a nut at the bottom of the spring that will remove it from the assembly, but it was seized and I couldn't quite get a good grip on it, so I just chopped through the shaft with a hacksaw. Now the spring is free, so I can fix up the paint and the rust. I put it in a small container and coat it with paint stripper. Be sure to wear your PPE when using this stuff because it's very toxic and will burn your skin. After about 15 minutes you can see the paint has begun to lift, and you can use an assortment of tools to remove the paint, like a scraper, sandpaper, or even a wire brush. A good tip, if you can't get all the paint off, is to leave it in vinegar for a few days, and that will combat the rust. So after 2 days in the vinegar and a quick sand, we have a fully bare metal spring. Now we can use some isopropyl alcohol to remove the grease before paint. Time for a lick of paint, and I'm using a paint and prime spray paint to turn this spring into a nice orange. And after a few coats, it's looking perfect. So now it's time to turn our attention to the shock itself. It's time to make this thing look the part, so I'm going to wire with the metal, paint the adjusters and clean the oil reservoir. Okay, so for the base we have to get a little bit creative. I've got this brake disc here which is going to be the main base that the entire thing is going to sit on, and this will sit on the table. It is a little bit smaller than what I'd like, but it will still do the job, I hope. Hopefully it won't tip over, but if it does I'm sure we can fix that. Anyway, we're going to have this on the ground, then we're going to be having a washer go over there, then a nut on top, and then we're going to have our shock bottom mount go into here. And then to tie everything together, we got some 3/8 inch steel bar, threaded bar. I'm pretty sure it's 3/8 inch. Anyway, we're going to thread that all the way through here, put another washer, and another couple of washers under there, and a nut, and then that's going to tie everything together down here. And then our shock absorber will sit up the top here. But to attach this to our actual frame, we're going to have to weld that to there. So that's what we're probably going to be doing right now. So we can chop the threaded bar to length, and then we can line up in the dead center of the shock absorber. Next we can lay some welds around it, and with all that welded, here is a pretty good example of why you should never trust me to weld anything.
Shit, what was that?
The bloody thing uncompressed. The weld broke, that's why. But in all seriousness, that could have been a lot worse. That's why we're loosening up the tension on which the collar attaches to the spring. So we're loosening that all the way up so there's absolutely zero tension in the spring. So I don't want that thing to shoot up like a rocket in the middle of the night. Righto, so I just re-welded it, and now it's time to work on the base. So for the base, we're beginning by welding the nut to the washer. Then both of those to the brake discs. With the welds ground down, it's time to tap some threads in the holes for the lamp's feet. Make sure you use plenty of cutting fluid when doing this to make the tap last a long time, and hold the tap at a perfect 90-degree angle or you'll end up with a wonky foot like the one you'll see in a little bit. So the base is basically done. I've tapped and screwed in some bolts just from up here, and so now we're just going to chop them off at the top of these nuts here. I'm going to leave the nuts on top just as like a little decoration. I think it'll look a little bit better. So these are pretty much just going to be the standoffs at the bottom so that we can have the nut underneath, which will hold everything together. Alright, hacksaw these three off, then we can pretty much give everything a polish and stick it all together. Alright, so this is pretty much done. It is a pretty good looking lamp stand, however it is not a lamp, so we need to go work on the lighting side of things. Alright, we got all our supplies. We got our lamp holder, that's what the light fits in. Speaking of lights, here's our light. We have a 6-watt LED, which is a 55-watt equivalent. We have an extension lead, which is just going to be our wire. We're just going to chop off the female end of the cord, and then that will be running into our light. And finally, we have our little switch. This is a nice little one. This is what we're going to be using to turn it on and off. We're going to put it into the little oil reservoir on the actual shock absorber. Alright, we've got all our supplies now. We can get to work. Using a step bit, we can get the holder 16mm, which is what the switch needs to be to seat properly. Woohoo! Like it grew there. Then we can drill a small hole into the frame for the wires to pass through. I soldered the 2 wires onto the switch, added some heat shrink to the connectors, and then I found the best way to get the wires through was to solder them to a wire that was already in place, and I can pull it through and desolder it. With that in place, I'm cutting off a piece of aluminium, bending it 90 degrees and drilling a couple of holes in it for the light fixture to sit on. I can use the original motorbike bolt to hold it on, then we can test fit the light and do the wiring. Alright, time for our first test of the switch and... Fuck. Oh, it's off. Hang on. There we go. Lovely. Alright. Fix up the wires and yeah, cool. We'll be done. And with the lampshade on and in its place, it's completely done and looking great. So that's how we made this lamp with common hand tools. I know a welder isn't quite a common hand tool, but you can just glue it together, so that's okay. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, you might like some of my other videos. I do use hand tools quite often, so that's pretty good. Those videos will be in the outro and on my channel, so feel free to check them out. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.